Excited to talk a little Polygon this morning. Welcoming on Max or Big Nill, just calling him by his government name since we have met in person and live in the same city, as well as Ruto. Before we get into like backgrounds and everything, Ruto, I have a bone to pick with you because I've seen your PFP. I've never met you IRL, but I have seen your PFP. And I recently saw you in a video. Bro, you are a tank, and I mean that in the most complimentary way. Like, you're a unit. Didn't see that coming. Did you play sports growing up? Like, are you just like, do you just a lifter? Because I was like, this dude looks like he could pick me up like a chess piece and throw me around. It sounded weird phrasing, just basically saying you're a large man. I don't know. Just congrats on being in good shape. Any tips for us who aren't? Because I guess I was just taken aback. I was like, oh, I thought he was more of a pipsqueak like me. Not the case.
No, first off, GM to the fan, man. It feels good to be up here. I've always enjoyed your guys' spaces, so yeah, I appreciate you guys having me up here. Second, yeah, I'm like too big, man. Honestly, I'm not that big, right? Like I'm 225, so yeah, I guess I'm a little girthy there. But
I aspire to be 225.
No, I don't think so, man. Like
75 dripping wet, and I'm at this like after we get off the show, I'm gonna DM Joey what steroids I need to get on to bulk up.
No, Rudo's gonna be like, it's a problem. Like, first of all, you have to bench press more weight. Sometimes you run out of plates. Ladies are constantly walking up to you because of your size. You're able to lift heavier things, and people ask you for it. It's a problem. It's a problem, right?
Dude, I don't know. I'm 30. I'm 33 now.
This is a small. I need to get out of like I didn't think I could fit into a small. I actually fit in the small, and it's the most embarrassing thing I've ever worn.
Nah, I haven't worn a small since man.
Third grade.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I wore a small. But yes, I did play sports. I played some a little bit of college lacrosse. I played football for 6 years. In high school as well. I did lacrosse there. Did boxing growing up, combat sports and stuff too. So
I asked where you grew up. What part of the country? Assuming it was
mostly Florida, but I'm military brat to 2 military parents, so I've lived all over the place. Was born in Italy, but mostly here in the South.
In Florida?
What's that?
Lacrosse was in Florida?
Yeah. Especially, well, I mean, I started high school in 2006, man, so it was a different time back then. Lacrosse was kind of like the fastest growing sport in America during that time, but it's a lot bigger now.
It's here. Like, I grew up in the Midwest. Like, I graduated high school in 99. Never heard of lacrosse. Like, we had no lacrosse sports teams. When I went to Ohio State, some of my friends from the Northeast were big into lacrosse. Yeah. And even like my oldest daughter went through high school in the Midwest, no lacrosse. There was some lacrosse. It just wasn't a big deal. We moved down here in Florida now, and my daughter's been playing. This is her 3rd year. Absolutely love it. And you're right. It is like the sport in Florida as far as like what's taking over the kids, what is the fastest growing sport. In the Midwest, it was soccer. Everyone's talking about soccer's taking over the world. Down here, it's lacrosse. And I asked because I didn't play, I played baseball. So I played baseball and football. So I probably would have never got into lacrosse because of those two I grew up playing. But I really enjoy watching the game more so than I did soccer. Soccer also fun, but lacrosse is like another level. And I think I probably would have found myself with a lacrosse stick in my hand had I grown up down here. Because you aren't kidding. It is a really big deal, and it's only getting bigger, I feel.
Yeah, it's intense too, man. It's I played football for a really long time too. I played defensive back, so I played DB. I did a lot of running back too.
225-pound DB?
I was a lot leaner, man. I was like 175 back then. A lot leaner. I had a really fast 40.
Like I played strong safety and tight end at 185 put together. Now I'm 175. You went the other direction. This is where
I got it.
They did not realize we were turning this into Fitness 101 this morning.
Definitely unintentionally, but basically all to say, I'm like 33 now, so I'm not gonna lie, man, holding on to this much weight kind of sucks. I'm like bending over to tie my shoe. I'm like, like, I'm getting winded just going up some stairs. Like, yeah, no, it's not great.
Gonna enter his Joe Thomas era and just get down to a lean 185. But no, it's lacrosse. I think a lot of like Brodies and Logans, a couple Shacklefords maybe, a Tanner or two. But no, it's cool, man. I love that. I love getting the background there. Before we get into all things Polygon, because we are gonna obviously talk the tech today, talk the chain. I think Polygon is one of the more underrated chains in general, from a gaming perspective, from a speed perspective, from a usage perspective, being one of the OGs, maybe one of the ones that when we talk to the Polygons of the world, the Flows of the world, some of the other ones were like, you've been around the block and have actual use cases and actual clients. And a lot of these other ones are sort of the flavor of the day. So before we get into that, though, Big Nill and Ruto would love to get, not, you don't have to give your medical background, Big Nill, or your full on lifting background, but
you need to know your weight and height, however.
Yeah, for sure.
Give a little bit of your background and from how you got into sort of Web3 and how you ended up at Polygon.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you all as always. Like, I'm a big fan of the show, the consistency you all bring, and now evolutionizing into live stream. Like, couldn't be more bullish on what you all do. So thank you as well. But I'm also a lacrosse guy. Fun fact. So played lacrosse in college. My brother actually played at the Ohio State University. So like, yeah, exactly. OH till I die. IO, baby, you know it, right? And so got to inherit a little bit of D1 lifestyle as well from him. Free sticks. That's what I inherited from him. Free gear, which was more bullish than anything, right?
I had roommates that played golf, and I did not get near enough free gear in my time at Ohio State.
The thing is, though, like, you go through sticks like you go through underwear. You know what I mean? Like, you break them all the time. So they're just like handing out plastic. Like, it's crazy. Where swinging the iron's a little bit different. Well, me and Ruto are also golf guys, so we're all on the same page here as far as our entertainment side. But no, for my background on my side, I joined Web3 about 5 years ago here. I actually entered through like the GameStop AMC run, so that like got me very tapped into like taking back power and like going against the man and all that kind of energy. All those streamers were talking about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Doge a lot, and that just kind of gave me the entryway. And then as far as Polygon goes, this was the height of what's it called, like lockdowns and COVID and all these things. And of course I was doing my degeneracy any way I could. So I was sports gambling a bunch, the bubble games, NBA. I was all addicted to that. DraftKings Marketplace opened up at the exact same time, right? Which is an NFT trading marketplace, which was just digital tokenized trading cards of athletes, right? Your Wayne Gretzky's, your Tiger Woods's, all these kind of things. I bought my first one with a credit card, $40, quick transaction. And then I flipped it the next day for $400. And I was like, holy shit, what's happening here? I need to understand more. You flip the card over on the back and it says powered by Polygon. I'm like, all right, here's where I'm going to start, right? So that was 4 years ago. And ever since then, I just kept falling in love with the technology, kept falling in love with the mission, the team. I've built my own teams and projects on Polygon for a while. And when the Utes emergence happened with the migration, everything that happened, it gave me the opportunity to bang the drum as loud as possible, right? Which was a fantastic avenue for me to grow. I was brought on part-time at Magic Eden. So I was helping with launchpad efforts, a lot of social efforts, and just really making sure the ecosystem was running well. And it was all Polygon based, right? All the launches that I did. And that naturally just guided me to do more work with Polygon and then find a full-time career. So OD, I appreciate you. Good to see you, my friend. But yeah, that's my history here. I've been at Polygon for 9 months now so far. And it's like, I can't tell you about how amazing the experience has been. Just to work with a team that is so locked into the greater purpose of Web3, right? We know there's like glitz and glam and shine and all these things, but when it comes down to it, having a clear vision on the future is what I look for in an ecosystem, and that's truly what I believe that we have here at Polygon. So that's kind of my history on it.
I love that. It's Polygon's one of those chains that you're like, if you ask me if I snap my fingers in 5 years, are they still going to be building and working on things? The answer is yes. And I don't know that I would say, like, there is executional risk in some of the new shiny objects of the day. If you ask me if Polygon's going to be around in 5 years, still building, still grinding, the answer to me would be like, yeah, I would be surprised if they weren't. Similar question to you, Ruto. So how did you end up getting to Polygon? Like, how'd you get into Web3? How'd you end up at Polygon? I'm always curious about people's backgrounds.
Yeah, so I'll try my best not to be too long-winded. You guys know I'm a big yapper, but yeah, most of my experience came from traditional digital marketing. So I did that for about 6 years, 5 to 6 years prior to coming into Web3. So I've been into crypto probably since 2016. I bought ETH before I bought Bitcoin, fun fact, and I read the white paper on ETH before the white paper on Bitcoin too in 2016, just because I thought smart contracts were such an intriguing thing. I really, at that time, was bought into the idea that this new internet and the potential of what smart contracts could do. So back then, it was only like Litecoin and I think Bitcoin Cash and like ETH Cash after the fork on Coinbase. So I was buying that. Granted, I was like I was pretty broke, so it's not like I went heavy in there and like made Jenny wealth or anything. But yeah, all that to say, I worked with a ton of like kind of digital marketing bros at that time too. And we were all talking about crypto all the time. And then sure enough, ICO stuff, had some fun in there. And then kind of, that long 3-year bear market. So came back around 2020. I was buying into Solana pretty early, like late 2020. And then I was hearing about gaming on Web3 gaming. So a lot of stuff like Illuvium was being mentioned. Zed Run was like a huge thing. NBA Top Shot was like this big thing. I had friends who were OG Bored Apes who were like minting and were like, hey, buy one of these ape things for, you know, $800. I was like, nah, that's pretty dumb. And then sure enough, they text me every day like, hey, this thing's running. And I was like, man, I got to look into this NFT stuff. Sure enough, you know, 2020 rolls around. I was hanging out there. And then I got my foot in the door I quit my job, mainly from that Solana trade that I talked about, quit my job to try to get into Web3 on the marketing side, BD side, whatever. Worked for a couple companies, startups, pre-funding, post-funding, more in like a BD partnership, marketing and growth capacity. And, you know, all that to say, it's led me to Polygon. So it's been a wild ride, to be honest. It feels like a decade. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that feeling too. So,
oh yeah, no,
Been in crypto
I
for 30 years.
yeah, it's like, yeah, it's like the longest, like it really is one of those things where it's like simultaneously like everything feels fresh and everything feels old at the same time. It's one of the weirdest paradoxal spaces it's the weirdest place I've ever worked. It's the only place I've worked where I could literally have a conversation with a 16-year-old and a 60-year-old in the same day in the same industry and get useful insights and learn something from both of them. It's bizarre almost, but that's really interesting. So I do want to like get into the people maybe aren't quite as familiar with Polygon because it is not the darling of Web3 Twitter all the time, right? Like obviously it's had some really good properties on it in the past. It's, you know, I know it very well from my early days here. I also know it from my time at Starbucks, right? And so we're working with Starbucks. And so talk, if you can, a little bit about sort of you know, either of you can take this one, but I'd love like a little bit of like, not even necessarily a history lesson as far as you're willing to go on Polygon as a chain, because I think a lot of people maybe aren't familiar with some of the properties and some of the things Polygon has done and how big it truly is.
Yeah, let me dive into that. As like the old head for Polygon on the call. I'll take that one on my side. So like it's been an evolution, right? And an evolution of like goals, an evolution of how we see the ecosystem pushing forward, and an evolution of overall like vision, right? And that's when I kind of set the stage here overall, right? We had like NFT runs, right, with the Utes movement. Back in the day, it was very focused and still very focused, right? We had gaming ecosystems that were emerging. You talk about what Sandbox meant for the space overall from the metaverse perspective. Talk about Sunflower Farm and what that did overall. For long-term visions of what gaming can man. Seiko, I appreciate you, brother. But again, a lot of great things that were being built. And on top of that, there was evolution of tech, right? Like ZK, zero knowledge proofs. What that means for the space was built by Polygon, right? So all these tech advancements, all these changes in the ecosystem. I talked about Sunflower Farm, which back then, or Sunflower Farm, is now Sunflower Land. There were days where we were seeing like, okay, it's all running on Polygon POS. Every transaction is hitting us. And then we saw Gwei prices on Polygon that was priced at like 300, 400 Matic when we were used to like 0.001 Matic. We've seen this evolution happen where people are using the tech in unique ways. And that's how we evolve, right? We see, okay, every transaction on chain, let's make sure we batch better. Let's make sure that we offload things and essentially adjust, right? And then the evolution came where we were very focused on enterprise, right? You saw those announcements. Starbucks was mentioned here. DraftKings was mentioned. Nike, all these big brands that were coming on. And honestly, from our perspective on both sides, we take ownership for this. I don't think that we were ready. Right. I don't think that we were ready as an ecosystem. I don't think we were ready as a chain itself to support these people in the right ways. And overall, I don't think that the teams were ready from the teams that we're bringing on, right? Your Nikes and Starbucks. It was just one of those times where we're in a certain stage of the market where resources were limited and we had big promises we wanted to uphold. Now, do I think we're much more stabilized now? Absolutely. Do I think if these teams want to engage and kind of re-jump into Web3, I think we're in a really good space. But right now, what our kind of thesis is to focus on what makes Web3 great, which is the teams that are building innately using blockchain technology, right? So your Poly markets, your courtyards, all the payment processors that we have out here. You can go on and highlight how unique these teams are. Over on the gaming ecosystem with Wilder World, everybody in between, they just have such unique use cases and they understand the long-term vision that we have. And it's now all leading to the ag layer, right? Which is this connectivity chain, essentially a layer on top of everything, which allows for free flowing liquidity. And it has a long-term vision of breaking down these silos, which is our main goal now, right? reason why we're seeing certain coins rise, we saw Sol have a fantastic run. It's because all the liquidity is on Sol, right? It sticks there. It has that opportunity. But our thesis long term is raise everybody up at once. That rising tide lifts all ships' energy. And if we have free flowing liquidity between these chains, everything will have the opportunity to grow, which is why we're building ag layers so aggressively. And that's why our big focus for this year is that. You're muted, Steve.
I'm so bad at this lately because there's a sickness going around my house, so I don't want to sniffle into the mic and have everybody hear me doing that. But like it means that I end up muting, and so like I'm regularly doing the like I'm muted.
I left mine unmuted that entire time, so I hope I had no background coming through.
Well, and Cap leaves his unmuted while he goes to pee, so that's also good when that
Stream
happens.
drop. We're calling him stream drop.
Yeah, because we have like a
mobile stream drop.
We work with Stream, which is like the, it's a sort of a gamified way to kind of earn points while watching. And so, yeah, we call that our stream drop. But Ruto, I want to go over to you before we go deep into sort of ag layer and everything you're working on there. You work in marketing. I want actually a couple of things. I have so many questions because I've done a little bit of marketing in Web3, and I'm curious your experience of, I want to talk about first the differentiation between Web3 marketing and Web2 marketing. And then I want to dig deep on a couple of individual products, like which ones and how you figure out where to focus your time. But talk about that difference at first, because I think a lot of people don't know, like there is a trial by fire learning curve and it is different.
Yeah, it used to be actually one of my favorite kind of topics to talk about. I think mainly because there's a lot of people in Web3 who've definitely like done bootstrap their own personal experience and their expertise and skill sets when it comes to marketing. There's some people in Web3 that are absolute unicorn chads at distribution and generating mindshare. That's a given for sure. I will say that the key differentiator between someone who might have Web2 experience in marketing and someone in Web3 might be the different channels or mediums for distribution to happen. So in Web2, you can do a lot more targeting, you can do a lot more paid ads, and kind of like the more traditional marketing stuff. So yeah, performance marketing, whatever it may be. In Web3, you're a little bit more limited. Granted, it's opened up a bit since when I first started in 2021, as far as like the different types of distribution channels you can leverage. But yeah, I would say that, in my opinion, is probably the key differentiator, and also just where the audience lives, right? Obviously in Web3, a big distribution channel is CT. And quite frankly, it was something I had to kind of learn a bit when I came to Polygon, was that a huge chunk of our users, for example, are not anywhere close in CT. They are not on CT at all, actually. So it actually is fun because I get to kind of revert back to building out strategies that kind of leverage that audience outside of this kind of echo chamber that we're in. So it's actually been kind of refreshing. But that's a huge differentiator too, is that a huge portion of what startups are trying to leverage as far as like user acquisition comes from CT. And in my opinion, I think it's a huge Achilles heel to Web3 when it comes to marketing and gaining users. I really, really do think the sooner we can break out of this idea that, hey, our main target audience is CT and that's all we're going to go all in on, the better Web3 will expand out, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point and something I've learned as well. It's like, it's one of the weirdest, like, define your audience markets that you can find because, especially I'm sure for you, because you're working on, like you said, products that exist in and outside of CT. And I agree. It's like, finding the right fit there is very hard because I think people are, I affectionately love CT. It's where we live. I get it. Like, it's awesome. But there's also this, a lot of unsavory things and things you have to kind of comb through to make things work as best as possible. So I feel that challenge. On the marketing side as well, though, like, how do you end up, like, people are so curious because everybody wants to get a job full-time, Web3, don't realize it is a job. Like, you do have to do a lot of work. How do you figure out where to spend your time as far as what products you're working on? Because obviously Polymarket, that's a marketer's dream. You get Polymarket, it drops down, it starts to get all this, steam. It's a tremendous product and it gets literal, attention on major news networks as well as in and outside of crypto Twitter. But then there's other products that you're trying to push. How do you sort of figure out like where you fracture your time when you have limited time in a day and so many different types of products?
Yeah, so it's funny. So currently, like I built out a go-to-market strategy on like, okay, what's identifying what our key message or narrative is for, let's call it Q1, Q2, even maybe the foreseeable future, like the rest of this year. And so what we do is, okay, let's say we want to do a highlight on breakout dApps, right? Then obviously Polymarket would be included in that, Courtyard, vice versa. A couple of other dApps that might be in there, right? Maybe even Step In, Reddit, whatever. And so when we're trying to figure out, okay, priority levels, are we trying to focus on what kind of metrics are we trying to focus on? Are we trying to focus on user acquisition, on just flat out distribution and education? So when you're building a go-to-market strategy and we have dApps like Polymarket, in reality, when we do marketing for, or we talk about Polymarket, right? If we were to just do a social strategy talking about Polymarket, adding a call to action, whatever it may be, that's actually not as beneficial as people may think. Mainly because Polymarket's user base isn't on A, they're not on CTE, and B, they do a ton of their own marketing as well. So people kind of think that like as a chain, it's our job to market some of these different dApps that we have. And mind you, it's great to highlight them, but ultimately these teams have their own marketing department, right? And it's just our job to kind of highlight, their success stories. But mainly for me, I think a huge focus for us this year has been transitioning into payments and infrastructure for that. So Polygon, for people who don't know, a huge chunk of our volume comes from stablecoins. Fun fact. So it's somewhere in the line of like 35+%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's way higher than I would have expected. You said a
it's
huge
very
chunk,
high.
I'd have been like, oh, 10 to 12%. Cool. Maybe.
No, it's very, very high.
40% of all stablecoin activity happens on Polygon. That's like the vibe. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a lot. And so now it's funny because what I do as a growth marketing strategist at Polygon is actually super different than what someone might be doing at, let's say Abstract or Bearchain or, any new L1 or L2. My go-to-market is going to look vastly different than theirs. And that's kind of like it's the challenge part, but also it's the part that I'm the most excited about because I've been working in Web3 full time for 4+ years. And it's refreshing to kind of go back to my roots and figure out what kind of strategies I can implement that not only highlights the infrastructure and tech side of what Polygon POS is capable of, but also on top of that, we get to break out and tackle these different challenges from like a Web2 marketing perspective, which is a lot of my background. So it's a great fit overall, honestly.
That's awesome. I actually love hearing that because honestly, like again, like the reason why I'm stoked to have you all on is because like I have this weird duality of worlds where I live in crypto Twitter like everybody else, like all of us do, right? And all of us jump on spaces. We're always talking. We're always doing that stuff. But at the same time, like, when I'm talking at a university, 90% of the people there could not give a shit about crypto Twitter, right? Or they don't know about it, right? And I think that like that duality of worlds is really interesting. And I'm so curious to see how they either merge or stay bifurcated over time because like they are two different worlds with two different products. But I actually think the long-term strategy, and part of why I said I expect Polygon to exist and continue to thrive in the next 5 years is because I actually think the long-term strategy exists off this group of people, which is it's a niche corner of the internet in crypto Twitter, in a niche corner of the internet, sometimes NFTs in crypto, in a niche corner. It's like you actually have to dive pretty deep. Whereas like if I go down the street and I ask people about, crypto, most of them are going to say like, is that like Bitcoin? Like, so I just think there's not as much, like my mom thinks I work for Bitcoin, I think is what she thinks I do for a living. So
everyone says that too. Oh, where do you, I've heard that from tons of people where they're like, yeah, my mom or my parents think I just like work for Bitcoin. And
yeah.
I just think that's so funny.
Yeah, no, it's like it's cute. My mom will be like, "Did you get any sponsors anytime?" And it's just like listening to their conversations. She'd be like, "How's Bitcoin?" And like thinking that's what powers my life. But I appreciate it. She's at least trying.
Satoshi's a good manager though. Like he's a good guy to work for. So
yeah,
like we're okay with it. It works out.
He demands a lot, but damn it, like I've learned a lot from Satoshi.
He's never once. They have never once asked me to sit on a pointless Zoom meeting that could have been an email. Not once.
That's true. Yeah,
a lot of autonomy with Satoshi.
Yeah, very hands-off manager. No, I love that. I guess like thinking of that as like sort of the your job and where you sort of fit into the equation, Big Nill, is like when you're sort of like trying to define chain success, whether it's, working with new dApps that are coming on, helping people build, helping businesses build with the infrastructure, similar question to you, because I think like one of the things that you two do, I think uniquely well is like, you're not somebody sitting in a high tower giving orders to people. You are doing work on a daily basis. And that is what I think a lot of people in this space aspire to do. So talk about sort of this, what you do as well on sort of a, obviously day to day is different, but like the sort of scope of what you're trying to do and how you look at it in Polygon and maybe how that differs from how other chains might look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I similar to Ruto was able to transfer my skills in the Web 2 world very well into Web 3, right? And previously I was an account executive, account manager, strategic, right, role in Web 2 marketing, right? So I was working for Cision, which is a large marketing group. They
Oh, no
power
shit. You worked for Cision?
Yeah, Cision and
I don't
PR
think I knew
Newswire.
that.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my
So
God. I didn't know that. That's hilarious.
yeah, so PR Newswire was like my vibe, right? So press releases, analytic tools, sales in that direction, and I was managing startups. Like that was my majority of what I had. So like marijuana companies, crypto companies, like tech firms that were just getting started in AI, and like kind of managing how they were able to promote through our various channels, but also be dynamic with their marketing overall. So because of that, what I transferred into over at Polygon is what's known as an ecosystem support lead or enablement manager, right? So I'm enabling the ecosystem to grow. What does that mean? Is in practice, I ensure that I kind of get paired up with teams that are growing in dynamic and unique ways. 9 months ago, my first account that I was, or I say account now, I'm Web 2 talking. My first team that I worked with was Courtyard, right? So Courtyard is obviously a fantastic platform for trading cards, for buying and selling different entities on that area. I'm super bullish on like cards in general. Teams like BZ and Courtyard are building in such unique ways, just to really make it fun and collectible and really bring back real use case to what blockchain means. So what I do on a day-to-day basis is I say it very simply. I'm the point guard for Polygon's really sick offense, and my favorite stat is assists, right? I'm Steve Nash out here. So I move the ball really around effectively to all of our really great teams that are built for their specific verticals. So if it's our tech team, we're talking about building chains using CDK, which is our chain developer kit. If it's jumping in and having conversations with marketing and building out awesome campaigns, I tap on Ruto and I say, hey, this is what my team has coming out. What can we do dynamically to support them? All the way down to grant research and community collaboration. So all those different arms that we work with, my insurance is to feel like, hey, I'm a team building on Polygon. I have the correct support I need because I can't do everything by myself, right? And the support of Polygon Labs truly helps because we have so many dynamic support models that are able to help and really get to our teams to shine. Now, I'm not going to take credit for anything that Courtyard has done. They are their own beast. You know what I mean? Like as far as transactions, what they've done overall, RWAs of Polygon are thriving. That's something I want to say as well. Where Ethereum has the lion's share, $7.9 billion in RWAs, Polygon is in second, right? Now, much smaller at 255 million, but still chasing that because of the efficiency layer. And that's led by teams like Courtyard and teams like Lumia, who are building very unique ways in RWAs for accessibility for real estate investment or card investment or whatever it may be. I'm really bullish on like the physical assets of these things because it brings more like real use case and more like an understanding for the general user overall. So those are the platforms I talk about a lot. So that's kind of the general what I do on my day-to-day basis.
That makes sense. Now, I guess, and this actually might be more of a Ruto question because I'm thinking about audiences here. When you're thinking about like, hey, I want to get started playing around on Polygon, like, is that even the wrong way to think about it? Because you're thinking yourself as an infrastructure layer that builds really cool shit. And so is it just a matter of like, look, like the dApps have their own marketing department. We're trying to market to get people on here, like you kind of mentioned. Or like if I wanted to say to like this group of people who are listening, because we're sort of like a weird core. I mean, you all listen to the show, like we're a weird corner in the sense that we have like, decision makers and VCs and people who listen and founders that are maybe not the typical I'm looking for the next airdrop farm all the time thing. So if everybody here said, I want to play around on Polygon, is that even the wrong question to ask? Is it no, we just like work on our dApps? Or I guess like, how do you think about that aspect of it? If somebody wants to get started using Polygon dApps, just go use Courtyard and play around? Or is there like a, hey, we want to send people to a couple different things that we're building?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, that that's obviously always going to be a goal, especially when we're doing like specific dApp highlights. A goal is always going to be, hey, check out this ecosystem, check out this product. Maybe it's a fit for you. And our job is to highlight all the good things about the product and some of the value that it has. But yeah, mostly if someone's come to me like, hey, what do you think? What should be like my first place, my first stop to go somewhere in the Polygon ecosystem? For me, I'm always trying to steer people at like a very basic foundational level. So obviously the answer I would give them would be different if someone who's like a native CT person came up to me like, hey, where do I go? And that answer would be different if it was just a friend of mine. Right. So, someone I meet at the bar, whatever it may be. But to be honest, I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I would probably just always say the same thing. Like, obviously we have our key dApps that have been leading the way for quite some time now. And that's usually the place I would recommend them to go check out, mainly because us operating as like a great infrastructure for seamless, cheap transactions to go through. Stable payments is like a great proof of that. And so utilizing something like Polymarket or Courtyard, more of my friends use Courtyard than I do, to be honest. And so I don't even have to tell them how to do something or like where to go or how to even interact with it. And in my opinion, that should be where most people strive to be at. Because the problem right now, I think, with a lot of projects in Web3 is that the UI UX experience from like a very basic level user is pretty rough, or it can be pretty rough. We've seen really great apps being built on Solana too. And like I use all those quite frequently too, right? Whether it be Rally or Vector or Slingshot or any of these products or Moonshot, who are like great user experiences. But that's kind of my answer too, is that I always just try to lead people to the place with the least resistance, because A, it's good feedback, and then B, it's also just where I think most users would want to go in the first place. Like I could tell them like, hey, you want to learn about yield? You want to dive into the DeFi stuff? Sure, there's people on C2 who understand this stuff, but in reality, that's not my goal. My goal is to send people to places that are very easy to use and understand. So, long-winded way of me saying, I would rather send them to places on Polygon that anybody could use. And that should be the goal for a lot of people, to be honest.
Yeah, I guess like Big Nill, you look at it that way too, where it's like, hey, this is an infrastructure layer and it's just building really great products for the long term that you're trying to like bring people on. You're obviously make sure that they have the proper support in there. But I guess like, do you think about it the same way where it's like, it's almost like, first of all, there's probably like a huge relief being like, showing up and not having your, not having your boss be like, we want you to engage with CT day one. Here are 5 KOLs I need you to work with, which is a great problem to have, not to have, because I think that gets sticky. But I guess like when you look at like how you're building out in the ecosystem, like talk about you talked about the ag layer, talk about those long-term goals. Let's dive in and eat the meat of that a little bit, because I think that is the meat of where you are headed. So extrapolate that a little bit.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I wanted to have the conversation, Steve. So as always, just wizarding and making moves out here. But what I want to say is like, that is the answer now, is like, hey, go play with these specific dApps because they're fire, right? And I think that like those dApps winning is Polygon winning. That is synonymous to me. That is exactly what it means for it. That's how teams should be looking at it. And we're lucky, like we're fortunate that we can have those avenues. And people don't like associate Polymarket with Polygon. People don't associate Courtyard with Polygon a lot of the times. Good. You know what I mean? Great. Like that is sick for us. And there was a joke that Thread Guy tossed out back in his heyday that was like, LOL, Polymarket has more TVL than Polygon as a whole. Good. You know what I mean? Like you're missing the point. That is the exact opportunity that it presents. And so that was like kind of like I don't know, it was like a self-win on that side. When they thought it was an insult, it was like, nah, like that's sick for us. But on the side of like the ag layer, right? That's the direction that we will be pointing people towards very shortly. Right? It's in the side of like, hey, you could play on Polygon, or you can just go interact with the ag layer and have a seamless transaction process that is not full of bridging and swapping and doing all these issues. It's using any sort of liquidity that you have in your wallet, connecting it to a seamless connectivity layer that allows you to play anywhere, right? Regardless if it's on, like, if you have Pol in your wallet, regardless if you have Sol in your wallet, whatever it is, we're building the rails to ensure that these things work that much more seamless, so you can have access to the best liquidity for yield and passive income, the best games, right? So that we can integrate those things effectively. If you add up all the teams that are pointing towards the ag layer, you're adding up 85% of the gaming ecosystem as a whole. That's a ridiculous number, right? Just based off of the volume alone of already what's existing in the ecosystem. So overall, eventually it will be a place where it's like, hey, here's the ag layer, go have fun. You know what I mean? Because it's going to be that seamless. That is the way that we're building in it. And we're making it that much more user focused. So the interactions are just clean as all hell. And there's no worry about stress of the learning curve. That's the biggest portion of this that I think that we need to alleviate is how do we get people past the learning curve and just make it like the internet? That is what the ag layer is. It's the evolution of the internet and giving people the power to make easy interactions and not stress about the entire education of the space first and foremost. Get educated as you interact. One more time with the mute, Steve.
I was going to say it's an interesting evolution that we're seeing here in general because
we see not just interesting. I think like for those that aren't familiar, like if someone's tuning in for the first time today, what Big Nill just described, like counter that or compare that to our first experience with a layer 2 back in 2021.
Yeah, the terrifying money getting stuck on a bridge for like 2 days and thinking that I've lost like $700, which was like a ton, like that.
Picture your most treacherous bridge you've ever seen in a movie. Like I would not cross that thing.
That
like,
still happens, dude.
Oh, dude, every day.
Happens.
That was the digital component of what we were dealing with in 2021.
I mean, I can't tell you, like y'all know I host spaces. I'm on the socials a ton. Like whenever I can't like unmute my mic or I'm like getting rugged from a space, people are like, oh, don't worry, Nill's bridging. You know what I mean? It's still a joke that I get on a day-to-day basis. And it's funny. Like I lean into it and it's good, right? Like people know us for something. I don't want them to know us for friction, right? I want us to understand like the benefits of those things. But it was one of the biggest contentious points of interacting with any layer 2, right? And Polygon was the biggest one. So Polygon caught the most flack.
Issue. Just to be clear, it was a layer 2 issue. Like the tech just wasn't there. The bridges were bad. And
yeah, exactly. It was your support.
It was not a user experience.
It was your suspension bridge from Tarzan, right? That's exactly what it was. Or George the Jungle, where it's like, you go first. I'm not crossing that thing. Take a leap if you want to. So.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I think like the going from there, like to Cap's point, going from there, but like, it's also interesting because like when you said the good part, I think I want to double tap on that because I think like, it's like, I don't care when I order something on Amazon and it shows up to my doorstep the next day. I don't care what on Amazon Web Services. I don't care. I just care that it worked. I care that the technology stands up and works. And I guess how far do you think we are from being truly abstracted where it's like, look, I pick up my phone, I log on to Poly Market, I log on to Courtyard, I press a couple buttons, it is seamless, it is quick, and just all apps or I would say like how far off do you think we are from truly major consumer apps, not just niche ones, not just collectibles apps, but major consumers apps being built on Rails that are this seamless, that are better, and actually have you just have that layer sort of abstracted out?
Months.
Straight
up. Like I'm not gonna lie to you. That is what the goal of the ag layer is, right? And when I say months, it means months. Like, you know what I mean? And so I think that like what you're seeing and what the evolution of it is look at what Wilder World is building. You know what I mean? Look how fantastic their ecosystem is. Look at the direction they're taking accessibility through an open market. Look at what advertising is going to look like in this massive metaverse that they're building. These things will be as easy as clicking one button and ensuring that we have traction and ease of use. That is what the ag layer's goal is, and months. Like for us, right? Now, will it take time to like get to the Amazon layer? Absolutely, right? Like it'll take time to have like those experiences that you think you're having in the Web 2 world now, where it's all in the background, you're not stressing on it. But for us, the teams are already existing, the teams that have said, yes, ag is our focus, months. Ruto.
Yeah, and if I talking to a bunch of different teams as well, if you guys think about like, let's go back in time a little bit to 2021, where things were even more fragmented. Obviously, there was a lot less new L1s and L2s around during that time. But you could imagine is that when people were looking to, create a new product, go to market with the new dApp, whatever it may be, they really did only focus on one chain and focus on generating liquidity from there. Whereas right now, you almost before going out the gate know that you will fail unless you have some sort of cross-chain compatibility, whether it be the potential for someone to bridge some of their assets to another chain or whatever it may be. A lot of these things are already being built into products that are going to market right now. So back in the day, we used to be fragmented not only as like with liquidity, but also as like community members, right? It was like this Solana versus ETH thing going on. And we're so far away from that now where all the users here are operating on a cross-chain basis, right? No one's like a maxi of any one chain anymore. That's just not there. And so in my opinion, the next solution to that is, okay, well, how do we connect all these different networks, users, and liquidity together? And obviously that's a big challenge. But I know it's something that the team here at Polygon are trying to, solve with AgLayer.
Yeah, that makes sense. And let me ask this then, because one of the things you said, Max, at the beginning there that I loved is you were very honest about, look, we brought on Starbucks and Nike and these big brands, and it was almost like we weren't ready and they weren't ready, which I think is a fair assessment. That's how technology and innovation works sometimes. Pioneers take shots. They get really great partners to take shots with. You learn, you move on, and you're like, hey, like, I think we're more ready to bring it back now. One of my bold predictions I had, and I don't know if it's going to end up, like, it's got to go through all this compliance stuff because I did it with my co-author who's an A16Z partner and things like that. But I made this bold prediction that I think in this year of 2025, we will see another big brand take a shot at a loyalty program on a side chain, a layer 2, something where they're actually going to try this loyalty thing again, because it is way too advantageous to build a community like that. You have the opportunity to upsell the customer. You can know your customer better. You can follow them past point of sale. There's so many advantages to it. So I guess my question would be, like, is there a set stated goal at Polygon when you're looking at different types of, do you want to get back into that business? Are you everything for everyone? Is there focuses of things you've learned from there where you're like, look, we want big brands because we now know how to do this right. We know how to do this wrong. And we know how to make sure that we are course correcting along the way. So are big brands something that you're continuing to look at? Is it a different focus? Polygon's obviously, you mentioned gaming and stablecoins and other things like that. Are there, like, will big brands be a focus again?
I think and I think at some point, yes, right. And I think that we're on the stage where we're feeling confident with our technology. And as the ag layer rolls out, it'll open up the doors for people thinking like, okay, I'm just building using Polygon tech, right? CDK, which again is our chain developer kit. How you're allowed to launch your own chain. It's so easy now. You know what I mean? And yes, there's bugs to bash and there's things to go through depending on your use case, but that will open the door for so many groups to come in. And the weight that they previously had was, I don't know how to ensure that I have stability and prediction for how much I need to spend on blockchain technology. That was the main power, like the main pain point for groups, because you make an estimation as a Web2 company, and then when it's 2x your estimation, it wrecks your bottom line, right? And then that whole department is saying, damn, this is a resource suck for us. That was the issue previously, because we've presented so many more seamless integrations, because these teams are getting that much more stable, and we work with the best like RAS providers, right? The teams are building these chains, being Gateway, Espresso, Gelato, like all these groups that are on top of the game of development of our tech, that it's just that much easier. So when we present to these teams and we talk to teams every single week, right? Big Web2 brands, they're thinking, hey, we're sniffing around. What does this look like? We talk to them every single week, right? We pitch, we propose, we give our sense, and we see if it makes sense overall. And some of them will be in our direction, some of them won't, right? Because they want that flash in the pan right now. They need that attention to spark Web3 for them, and that's more than fine. But for everyone who doesn't know, NHL, built on Polygon, a bunch of breakaway apps that are doing fantastic things that are very unique, right? They're digital collectibles similar to a Top Shot vibe, but in the NHL world, we are collecting these things, all built on Polygon. Why? Because we've been here for a long time. We know how to handle this shit now, right? And they're consistently building in unique ways as well. So it's not it won't be long until a few more people come through and say, damn, like, it's almost too easy. Why wouldn't we go with somebody who has interoperability built into their tech stack already? And then they have a fire team behind them that knows, like, proven. You go ask Courtyard, you go ask the teams that we've supported over the last like 12 months. They're going to say, dude, couldn't imagine more support. I guarantee that's what they would say from a lot of different plethora of teams that are building in unique ways. And that's what our overall goal is.
Yeah, we have Reliance Geo. We actually just announced an integration with them. So they're the largest telecoms company in India. So they have a user base of over 450 million users. So they've created a browser where anyone in India who's browsing the internet can earn rewards, and all those rewards are built on Polygon POS rails. So like, that's ultimately when you ask the question of like, hey, is enterprise still like a focal point? Of course, it absolutely is. It always will be. And we have tons of different case studies that prove that, when they do build on our rails, that it's pretty seamless and it works. So
Two questions, and I'll let you all get out of here. You've been generous with your time. It's been really exciting, and I don't know. I like having people that I like on the show who I actually genuinely get. People I would hang out with in person on the show is always fun because then we're just basically doing a hangout, only just on our show, which we get to double up and have some fun. So I guess like two questions to get you out of here. One. I'll actually save the more the more one that I'm not sure the answer to at the end, but a more straightforward question. So does then Polygon, do you have like a department, a group of strategists on team that are like, look, we've learned all the things. We're a mental database as well as a digital database of everything that's happened, who you basically can direct any given type of client to be like, this person knows that shit, go to them. Or even if they're an expert on multiple things, is it a thing where you have strategists on change, you work with the brands, it is an all hands on deck thing? I've always been curious how that sort of success thing, because you're obviously a success manager that makes sure the resources are there, Big Nill, but like are there people who are just like, you're the strategist assigned to this account, almost like an account manager?
That's my role, right? That's exactly what it is. And everyone has their focal points on how they kind of direct things as well. Like I've been big into gaming, consumer, and now I'm like touching base with infra, right? So that's how things have evolved. I actually like this last week took on a new role, right? Which is growth account management, not just Ruto's laughing because it's funny. It's like the evolution you're seeing right in front of us. And now we are in our own like kind of like battalions, for lack of a better term, where we are locked into, like I'm locked into chain development and infra. That is what I'm locked into. Now, people like Brandoff, who hang out in the space often, he's a little purple wizard emoji that floats around as well. He's locked into consumer apps and gaming, right? And then Glabus, Greg, who's also out here a ton, he is like the head of BD gaming and partnerships on that side. It's so we have all these departments that are very, very effective for managing these things, filtering them effectively, and supporting them in the most unique ways possible. Because an app like Courtyard, to be honest, Web3, not their importance at all right now, right? And you should know that with the BZ, like connection that you have, it just isn't where they're going to find traction. Sure, is it fun to be on CT and like get all this traction and get visibility? Absolutely, it's great. When it comes down to it, who are they looking to target? The cross section of nerds that likes cards, collectibles, and luxury items and crypto, very small. You know what I mean? And so you need to be able to scale up. You need to go to trading shows. You need to go to card conferences. You need to tap in to the Web2 market and be in that unique way. Because for CT to be important for Courtyard is foolish, where TikTok and Instagram is where they're going to find their traction. And that's how they've had success, in those unique ways. So coaching them through, learning alongside these teams, again, like just using a Courtyard instance, I've been with them for 9 months. Did I coach them on some of the things that I would do as a general card enthusiast? Like I got Squirtle hanging out behind me. I love Pokemon, right? But it's more so the fact that I've been able to learn alongside them, and now we're ready for the next Courtyard. Now we're ready for the next game to come out, and now we're that much more equipped with the weapons that we know that we need to have big W's out here.
Yeah, and that answers a lot, because it was like my basic thought was like, the difference between a real ass business agency type model versus like a sort of stringing it together is just that, where it's like sometimes people are like, yeah, like everybody kind of chips in, and like, look, that's how startups work a lot of times. Like it's all hands on deck, but like that kind of answered the question, where it's like, was it like, hey, you go to Max and Max tells you everything, or is it like, no, you actually have your niches and your specialties that then allow you to really dig in deep? Because for my money, I actually, I'm glad that's the answer, because I think it's cool to be a mile wide. It's cooler to be a mile deep. And obviously in crypto, you almost are both in a lot of ways, because we have like to live, we are terminally online, but like at the same time, like knowing that, like, to your point of Courtyard, another RWA related asset can come to you, and you have those learnings to be like, here are 5 things I know, not just from my experience, my personal experience, as well as where I'm an expert. And I think that's really important. And I think sometimes in crypto, you sometimes see people get a shot at jobs, which is great, to do things maybe they weren't normally going to swing up to. But I like it when it's like, yes, like if you're bringing on a real, and like as somebody who worked and I had to manage the agencies at Progressive, Nestle, etc., for like the jobs I was doing, I didn't want someone to be like, hey, here's somebody who does absolutely everything, who doesn't really know much. Like I wanted the expertise in food. When like in Nestle, we worked with a group in Edelman, specifically called Edible at Edelman, because they worked on food brands. That was important to us. So knowing that like that's at least starting to happen on the chain side, I think that's hyper important, because people just treat all business the same. And you can't be like, yo, this worked really well for DGOS when they bridged, so I think it would work well for Courtyard. Like, not the same.
Dude, I wish, I honest to God wish that, because I don't think people quite understand how many moving parts go on behind the scenes for bigger companies in Web3. People just assume like, oh, this new meta is out, so how come they're not like taking full advantage of this or something like that? Like they don't understand the difference between going from 0 to 1 when you have 200 plus employees. Obviously, we still operate definitely like a startup at the same time, but we also have a much more like corporate structure where there are people who handle specific things, and there are specific handoffs that need to happen and particular conversations that need to get done before anything kind of gets the green light, right? Where I've worked with a ton of startups in Web3, it's like I wear 25 different hats. We're kind of gunslinging, we're shooting from the hip. Whereas like Polygon, there's a structure to everything. And I think if you talk to anybody who works at a major Web3 company, it's the exact same thing. So I really do wish it was like a behind the scenes, a day in the life of so-and-so as like the COO at, Solana Foundation or an Abstract. Like, I just wish people could see actually what goes on behind the scenes. And I think users would be like, oh, fuck, like, I get it now. I'm sorry for being such a dick for such a long time.
I say this a lot. Like everyone looks at like all these like ecosystems or like blockchains, and I think this is like this beautiful cruise ship. The amenities are great. We serve food 24/7. There's beer on tap. Like it's all good to go. What up, doggo? Let's get it. But no, it's a pirate ship. You know what I mean? Every single Web3 startup is a pirate ship, and there's days that I'm dancing on the deck and it is sunny out, and we're all got our grogs raised to the sky. And there's days that I'm in the basement, I'm banging boards onto the because we just took on cannon fire. You know what I mean? And that's what it is. And so you all have to hold up your end of the bargain. But on top of that, we do a really good job of ensuring that it's a team win. That's the thing that we really like to emphasize is like, if I need help, I am 0% going to hesitate and saying like, yo, Ruto, I know you know this better than me. I need you to come on board and make sure that we actually get this so it's not a slip up. I think that's the learning curve that we've learned from these big enterprises, that it can't just all be one person. It has to be a plethora of resources so we all win collectively.
This is probably going to sound really bad, Steve, but it sounds like the Polygon team is a team of grown-ups in a industry of a bunch of adolescents.
Interesting.
It is like, well, and also like, I love the fact, again, people like
might be being too kind to some of the others in the space.
Yeah, I don't know if they're all adolescents yet, but
yeah.
No, I appreciate like also like, I mean, it's also great because like both of you, like the analogies, the way you explain things, like you're both so well spoken as far as the gift to gab goes, which I think is really helpful for translating, especially in this industry. Like an underrated skill in this industry is having people who actually can speak both languages very well, and I think it helps. And I know you both. I've known you. Again, I've known Big No for a little bit now, and I know we both speak in analogies a lot, which is like also maybe you're just speaking my language, but I think it makes such a difference in having people who actually can talk both languages. It's like I know somebody who is looking for a major Web3 company looking for like a social media manager right now. Really good job. And they're like, look, we need somebody who's fluent in Web2, fluent in Web3, has a marketing skill, also determined. It's like hard to find those people.
Grown-ups in the C-suite as well as the DGens. Like it's actually is a very unique skill set. And I don't think even people here every day, very few of them, some have the ability, very few of them have the ability and the experience in that business acumen to actually be able to pull off both.
Is that the one that Adam posted about too?
Yeah. Are you aware of what the?
Yeah. Okay, and so I commented on it. I was like, I don't think people actually realize how difficult of a role that is to fill. People just assume, especially people who like maybe they're pretty young or they don't have much Web2 experience or even experience working for a bigger company. I don't think they really understand like, hey, you may be a shit poster, but for a role like that, we're talking organization, we're talking strategy, we're talking having, okay, what are KPIs we need to hit? How do we figure out what those metrics look like? How do we optimize on that?
That's like 5% of the role.
Right. For them, it's like, oh, well, I posted this dope meme and it's straight cooked last week. So like, I'm just going to keep sending it with that.
Which
and
is
it's
sick.
Like, it's so much more than that.
Which is sick, but it's unicorn vibes. Like you need to be able to do so much and just like understand that there's a way that you speak to some people and a way that you like, and I had to evolve too. I was on like Web3 needs to be more formal. It needs to have this level of attention where it can, an outsider can look in and say, wow, this makes a ton of sense. Like, and I'll give like the critique of like how Utes came over and things like that. There was this idea in the brain of like the Utes community that they were going to get all these partnerships. Right. It was like, oh, Starbucks with Utes and like Nike with Utes and all this stuff with Utes. Like, granted, would that have been super bullish? Absolutely. But if you're an outsider looking in and you come into a youth space and when it was at the typical level of its degeneracy, that probably scared the shit out of Nike and all these teams, right? Imagine looking in and saying, oh, well, our big thing is shoeies. It's sick. You know what I mean? Like that's great. And I'm about that culture, right? I've reformulated my thesis that it needs to be a flavor of both. But at the same time, if we can't speak to people and be at that C-level executive formality, we're going to lose people along the way and the opportunities are not going to present ourselves. So that's why we have like formulated our team in this direction. The last 12 months, I'll say, has been the most, and I say that because I got hired, but the last 12 months has been most bullish hiring spree we've been on. Right? It's Ruto. It's bringing up people like Smokey Titan who have done great spaces and now full-time employed. It's Brandoff. It's Maddie from Grants. Like all these individuals, they have the why and they have the background, but they also love the aspect of culture that we have here, and they're able to execute on that many different levels.
I know you're trying to get out of here, so this may be a more challenging question to throw at you at the
Ruto can fade. We do have all hands. Ruto can fade if he needs to. I can stay on for a few more minutes.
Real quick, and I'm just curious, like, do you think, because it was coming about Starbucks and DraftKings in the chat, do you think, like, if you were there during that time, do you think like that was still a net positive that you had those clients and they ultimately wound down their Web3 operations? Or is that still hanging as like a somewhat of a black eye that they launched? Like, I don't hold that against Polygon whatsoever. I'm become a DraftKings anti-evangelist after promoting their brand for a decade. It was nothing that Polygon did. It was just poor decision making on DraftKings' part. But how do you view those big brands who came and left? Is it do you still have to, I guess, overcome objections when you're talking to new clients, or is it positive that they actually were there and they made the choice?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was gonna answer that because I think it's funny because I actually got asked this a bit at ETH Denver, and my answer is people assume that because they sunset that their activation that it was a failure. By all metrics, it was actually a very big success. So the people who don't really know, like, okay, what did the on-chain activations look like? It was actually all very good, and there was really great feedback. What people need to understand is that when companies, especially in emerging markets, what you do is you kind of dip your toes in. You do something pretty low lift to figure out whether this is like a viable business direction you want to take in the future. And from our perspective, it builds that social proof. And so if anyone comes to us and say, hey, like, we think, I think they sunsetted that. It must have not worked out. Actually, no, it worked out very well, actually. But that social proof that comes
manage for some of
them. Yeah,
well,
it's ultimately, and I think this is what a lot of chains would love to have, and I think they're actively doing it, is a lot of chains, they need a big partnership like that so that it builds their portfolio of social proof. So that in the future, when there is the next enterprise company that wants to come in and they're looking for an infrastructure chain that they can build on, we have that portfolio of like, hey, this company have all leveraged our tech, and it worked out seamlessly for them. So I do think it was a bullish thing at that moment. Tons of web enterprise companies were coming in and dipping their toes in. A lot of them executed poorly on that end, but people forget that our job is to set them up and make sure they understand how it works. And then it's ultimately up to them to execute on that. So like we're not their marketing arm, we're not their product arm, like we're not their strategists when it comes to the Web3 integration part. We just help them integrate, and then it's up to them to execute on it.
Well, and I think that's a good point people miss, is like people sometimes miss the plot on things where it's like, watch the metrics and the statistics across this thing, and you'll see that not only with the success of the Polygon end, like I don't think the program, I don't have any inside information or anything I'm going to share, but like, I don't think the program was sunset because the program wasn't working well. Right. And so I think you have effectively a baseline, and now it's, sort of as things have improved and the ag layer comes up, you have that opportunity to even, potentially replicate those sorts of things. Last question, then we'll let you get out of here. Again, appreciate you going over with us and making you late to the meeting. I will write you a note to your boss if you need it. I promise. But do you get frustrated working at a chain that is clearly leading the way in so many ways? I talked to somebody, I'm not going to say who. I talked to somebody who is a multi-millionaire, has built really cool tech, is building even other cooler tech. And they've made the comment about how much they love Polygon. And they're like, but people just don't seem to respect them in our weird corner of the internet. Is that frustrating to like be on that end of the business end of people making like weird jokes about bridges from 4 years ago? Or is it like, nah, you know what? Like, we're just going to keep building. We'll see you at the finish line. Be honest. Is it a little frustrating?
So, like, first and foremost, the best part about having Mark as a CEO is that he says, if you need 15 more minutes on Twitter to make sure that you get some mind share, take 15 more minutes on Twitter. So we're good. Thank you for the doctor's note. But what I will say on that side is, like, is there an aspect of me that gets frustrated when people don't see value in what we do? Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd be lying if I didn't think that, right? Because I hosted spaces, I banged the drum for so long. Y'all saw me with Espresso Shot, right? We had the largest space that we hosted every single week was the Polygon Shot. 120 people there consistently on a daily basis for a year on end. And it was me banging the drum, and people still didn't adopt the tech. People still didn't jump into our platforms. It felt like I was talking to myself sometimes. And is that frustrating? Absolutely. But now it's just a dark fuel. It's Luca Nets vibes. It's at the side of, like, please fade us longer. You know what I mean? So that we can, so that when you have to join us, you shrug your shoulders and you have that FOMO and you say, damn, it's been too long and now I have to play catch up, and that FOMO will take over. So stay asleep. If you don't like what we do, that's fine. But at some point, you will be with us because we are inevitable. Ag layer is coming. We have these integrations that are going to be fire. We have breakout dApps. We're taking mindshare every single day. And it might not affect CT. It might be on TikTok. It might be on Instagram. It might be somewhere else that we're doing these massive things, and it's not going to stop. So we say that Polygon's inevitable for a lot of different reasons, but it's because we've been fueled by this doubt. You know, we've been fueled by people that don't think that we can get there. And in the long term, we'll see who the victor is. And it's not a one singular victor for me. It's the podium that everyone stands on collectively. We'll be standing on that podium.
It's the Ohio State after the Michigan game vibes this year, where it was
Oh,
like
God.
everyone was doubting them. Everyone was like, and like when you look at, like, they actually filmed after that, and you can see Latham Ransom, the safety, being like, we're going to go and we're going to beat the brakes off Tennessee. Then we're going to beat the brakes off Oregon. Then we're going to beat the SEC. Then we're going to win a national title. And what are they going to say then? They're going to say we're the greatest. It's sort of like that same energy of, like, they knew what they had. And it's like, once you know what you have, and once you're in that really good position, people who are really angry about it and, like, upset about respect are usually people who maybe have that insecurity. But I can hear, like, look, it's frustrating, but just wait till we cook. Sorry, Ruto, about the OSU rep. I had to do it, but it was the best reference I could pull.
No, you're good. I was just saying that it's for me personally, because I'm relatively new, so I come in with a different perspective, like the outside looking in from, like, a user standpoint, and to be frank, does it bother me? It did, maybe for about a week, and then I kind of, in my role is obviously marketing, right? And I have to figure out target audiences. I have to figure out where our users are, and it doesn't bother me because for most companies and most chains in Web3, their main job is to get mindshare distribution and users out of CT. And in my mind, we've already kind of gone outside of that bubble a bit. And so for me, when someone says to me, like, oh, like, you know, it's a dead chain, no one uses, like, why do I got to own Pol? I'm like, that's fine if you feel that way. But ultimately, our strategy is going in a direction forward that's not, there's not a lot of friction when it comes to your opinion and the goals that we have internally. So everyone's fighting for mindshare, which is great. And I think that should be a metric for success. But ultimately, where we're at currently in the business, our goal isn't to be, like, the coolest kid at the table. Our goal is to build tech that is scalable and outweighs kind of the ultimate, what people think is cool on CT, for example. So that's where I'm at, and that's what our goals are. And it's why I don't mind when people say that stuff, because they're not our target audience, right? They're just not.
Such a good way of putting it. Like, there's no friction created for the chain between the opinion on CT and the things we're trying to build. I think that's a really great way to put it. Look, appreciate both of you. Obviously fans of both of you, and grateful you were able to stop by and hang out with us for today. Have to do it again sometime. Definitely, obviously, coffee, beers, whatever, in person at some point for sure. Next chance we get. It's actually not as hard for Max and I as it should be. So I think that's on both of us for being both terminally online and working 24/7. But we'll definitely get together again soon. But thanks to both of you for coming through. Really grateful for not only the education, but it's almost a palate cleanser from some of the stuff we do on here. And so I appreciate both of you very much.
Yeah, appreciate you both a ton too.
Legends. Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, and again, we'll be rolling through some leadership. We'll be bringing some people around. Like, it's only up from here. So we're gonna have some great conversations in the short term. I appreciate you all a ton again. Thank you.
Thanks
Awesome.
so much.
Enjoy the meeting.